just done a huge capital campaign to build a new education building, and I was so excited, and the people were so excited, and all of a sudden, I was in the middle of Home Depot one day, and I get this phone call. And I thought, not good. It was spring. Okay? As United Methodist, that should tell you something. I get this phone call, and I look at it, and I'm thinking, so I answer it, and sure enough, it was the district superintendent, and he said, Cindy, we have this amazing church. Don't ever, we have this amazing church that we want you to move to in the valley. And I said, in the valley? What church? Well, we can't tell you yet, but we need to know if you're willing to consider it. And I said, give me 24 hours. I need to talk to my husband. Usually they give you like an hour. And I said, and I'll call you back. So we talked, we cried, we prayed. I was on my hands and knees. I mean, I was not ready to move. I had been in this church over there for 4 years. Things were going great. And I just was like, Lord, why? And I called them back the next day and took one deep breath and said, no, I do not want to move. Holy moly, you just don't do that very often. And the district superintendent said, okay. And God bless you, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. And I thought, good. I'm here. They can't just. And so I went on my way thinking everything was good. And people at the church are like, have they called you? Yes, but I said no. Yay, 2 weeks later, I got another phone call. And that phone call said, Cindy, we have been praying. When they start like that, you have no choice. We have been praying, and you are the person that needs to move to the valley. And I said, okay, it's been 2 weeks. Can you tell me which church you're planning on sending me to? And they said, yes, we want you to move to El Mesias United Methodist Church in the valley. And I took this breath, and I stopped, and I said, really? Why do you think that I would be a good match for that church? And they said, because of your history, Cindy. Okay. My father, 60-some years before that, was the pastor of that church in the valley. And I was born while he was serving that church, right? So I would be going back to the church of my infancy and childhood. And they said, because of your history, because your father was loved, and he was, okay? And I don't know if that's good or bad, to go back to, anyway. And because you speak Spanish, and they had this long list of becauses, they said, we feel like you're the person to go there. So I said, I'll call you back in the morning. I went to my husband and I said, Ian, this is where they want me to go. And I just never even imagined that I would be sent to that church. I would be one of the first crossover pastors with the unification of the two conferences, going from Southwest Texas to a Rio Grande Conference church at that time, because the unification had not happened yet. And I said, I don't want to leave St. Mark, but maybe this is what we're supposed to do. So I called him the next morning, and I was talking to the district superintendent, Laura Merrill, at the time. And she said, so what do you think, Cindy? And I said, well, after lots of prayer and everything, I'm going to say yes. And she said, we don't want you moving there unless you're going to put all of your energy and heart into it. And I said, I never go anywhere without all the bells and whistles and all the stuff that goes with being the pastor of that church. I said, I will do my very best. And so I ended up at FUMC. Now, this was the church, where I had been born. This was the church where I was until I was 8 years old. And there were still people there that were there when I was born. My second grade teacher was sitting right there. My first Sunday in that space. And I recognized her. She looked us. It was amazing, and people everywhere. And it was an interesting thing. And I thought about that when I read this scripture, because Jesus in this passage goes back to the synagogue of his childhood. Now, the longer I was at FUMC admission, the more, and I have got to admit, I thank the Lord that he sent me back to the church of my childhood and not the church of my teenage years. Okay, because that would have been a little bit different, I think. They remembered me as a sweet little thing. All right, so Jesus had that same situation. He had just begun his ministry. He was already healing. He decided to go north into the Galilean area and preach in the towns around where he had lived and grown up. And the people in Nazareth hear that he's coming, because you remember, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, Bethlehem, right? When they started. Then Jesus, Mary, Joseph are told to get out of Dodge, and they go to Egypt. Remember? And then Joseph is told, you can bring them back. Herod, that wanted to kill baby Jesus, is dead. So bring them back. And when they came back, instead of going to Joseph's home, they went to Nazareth, further north. And that's where they lived until Jesus began his ministry. Nazareth was one of those crossroad places. It had a Roman fortress there. It had Roman soldiers that were housed in Nazareth. It was a crossroad, and so traders came to that place. And though it wasn't a big town, all the news came through by all of those who were traveling, because that's how news traveled in those days. And so they had already heard about what Jesus was doing before he even showed up at the synagogue that day. Now, Jesus went to the synagogue because it says, as was his habit. He went to the synagogue every time he had a chance. He was a very faithful attender in worship. It was important to him. And we need to learn from that too, right? Jesus set that example for us. But as the visiting teacher, we don't know if any of those that early disciples were with him, but if they were, they called him rabbi. And so the people knew he was a famous teacher. And so as the visiting teacher, he was asked to read. And from the scrolls that morning, to read the scriptures. And it says he was handed the scroll of Isaiah. Now, to hand someone the scroll of Isaiah was to hand them the scroll of Isaiah. Some of the scrolls in Jesus' day, in the literature that I was reading, some of them were 65 feet long, of pieces of parchment, all sewn together, and then they would have two poles, one on this side and one on that side, and they would roll them up towards the middle. And every Jewish synagogue to this day has the different scrolls up in the Holy of Holies up there, all wrapped, rolled up in velvet cloth, and you don't touch them with your fingers because of the oil on your hands. And Jesus was given, he did not choose the scroll of Isaiah. He was given the scroll of Isaiah to read. And it probably took him a while. Isaiah has over 60 chapters. And the verses that he read were from Isaiah 61. So he had to unroll and find And Jesus knew his scripture well enough to know it'd be somewhere close to the end of that scroll, right? So he found that place in scripture with Isaiah 61, 1 and 2 that has already been read this morning. I am here to set free the captives, to heal the blind, to heal people. And then he said, you would read standing up, and then you would sit down and expound upon the scripture. So the sermon was done sitting down. When he sat down, all he said was, this scripture has today been fulfilled in your hearing. That was quite a statement to make. And this whole passage set the tone for his ministry because it all has to do with spiritual restoration of the people and meeting their physical needs. Jesus didn't pick that passage just by, like how we do sometimes. Okay, Lord, I have a problem. I'm just going to let the Bible open and see what happens. No, he knew exactly what he needed the people to hear that day. And he finished reading and sat down and said this famous line, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. And with that statement, he was proclaiming himself. He was proclaiming himself in that very moment in his hometown as the anointed one, as the Messiah, as the one that Isaiah had spoken about hundreds of years before. And Jesus fulfilled every prophecy about himself, but typically not in the way anybody expected, right? He didn't come in. He didn't ride into Nazareth on this big white horse in full armor going, I'm going to free you from Rome. That's what they were hoping the Messiah would do. No, he came quietly and calmly, and then he started changing the world. Now, the people of Nazareth had known him since he was a child, and the scripture says, right after he says this has been fulfilled, it says the people were amazed by his teaching. And then the very next line, somebody says, isn't that Joseph's son? And right there, with that statement, begins the doubting and the questioning and the wondering. How dare he proclaim himself? He's Joseph's son. And so Jesus knew, or he knows, as he often did, right? He knew, it seems, what they were thinking. And so after that person says, isn't that Joseph's son? He tells them a couple of things. He says, you're going to quote this proverb to me, and then you're going to do this, and they're all just sitting there going, how does he know that? How did he know I was thinking that that's exactly what I was going to say? But he also knows that what they really want from him is for him to do something amazing, for him to perform a miracle, for him to heal somebody so they can go, yeah, Jesus is from our hometown, right? And look at how amazing he is. That was all the wrong understanding. That is not what he had come to do. And so he confronts them. And he reminds them in his amazing way. He says, the prophet is most unloved in their own home, in their own town, like that. And then he reminds them about Elijah and Elisha. And how Elijah picked a widow who wasn't even a Hebrew woman to help during the drought. And how Elisha, though there were lepers, people suffering from leprosy everywhere, he picked Naaman, who was from Syria, who was not a Hebrew person, as the one to be healed. Oh, this made the people angry. That he said, boy, they understood that. He was saying, you are as bad as those folks were back then. All you want is somebody to perform miracles and do amazing things, but only for you. Only for you. Because you feel like you are the only ones that are worthy. Well, they didn't like that. Jesus was telling them that his ministry was for everyone and not just for them or those they deemed worthy. Most of it, as we know from reading the Gospels, was among the Samaritans and the Gentiles and the outcasts of society. That's where Jesus focused most of his attention. Now, we need to know, and we need to ask this question among ourselves this morning. Who do we consider to be unworthy of Jesus' love and healing and concern? Who are those Samaritans or Gentiles or the outcasts among us that we feel are not worthy? Not worthy. That's the question Jesus was asking them in that day. And he was saying, no, I have come to serve everyone. Jesus' own townspeople did not accept his word or his ministry. And there is this sad sentence in the scriptures that say that Jesus was not able to heal very many in Nazareth because of their unbelief. That is one of the saddest lines in scripture, in my opinion. Here these people knew Jesus, had seen him grow up, and he would have been more than overjoyed to be healing the people he knew and had grown up with. And yet because of their unbelief, it says he was unable to do that. Because if you remember, most of the time Jesus was saying, do you wish to be healed? Do you believe that I can heal you? So a lot of his healing power came because of the faith of those he was getting ready to heal. And the people in Nazareth, most of them rejected him. He, however, kept on helping people. And even though they tried to kill him that day, did you catch that at the end? They went from, wow, what he says is amazing, to, isn't he Joseph's boy? To, oh, I cannot believe that you're comparing us to, we need to get rid of him. Just like that. I mean, it went choo, choo, choo. You know, we don't know how much time passed, only minutes, I think, from, wow, we're proud of you, to, we need to get rid of you. And when it said they tried to run him off the cliff, that's what they would do. They would just kind of herd the person, you know, that they were trying to kill off the cliff. And if they survived the fall to the bottom of the cliff, then they were already down there where they could throw big boulders and rocks on them until they died. That's what they wanted to do to Jesus. And the scriptures say that he disappeared from their midst. And there's 2 or 3 places where the scriptures say that, where he just disappears. It was not his time. And it was not up to them to determine the number of his days. And so he disappeared from their midst, and his ministry continued. But he did not give up on the goal of loving and serving others. He never gave up on that, even till on the cross when he ministered to the thief, right? He never gave up on loving and serving and ministering to others. We too are called to continue to be faithful. To be faithful and to share the good news, even though there will be those who do not accept it. Most of the people in Nazareth did not accept the good news that Jesus brought them that day. May the Lord give us the strength that we need. The strength that we need to live for Jesus, even among those who know us best. Those people in Nazareth knew Jesus. They knew his family. Sometimes the place that is hardest for us to live out our faith is among those that know us best, because they know us best, right? And they're like, yeah, I know you, okay? Fortunately, those in LMCS knew me best as a child when I was good, right? And then they loved me and accepted me as an adult. We are called upon to minister to those we don't know, and sometimes especially to those who know us best. Thanks be to God. Amen.